Hi, everyone. Welcome to Soul Speak. I'm Talya Pardo. I'm an editor, a life coach, and a writing coach. And I'm also the host of this show. And I love to do this show because I get to invite amazing people to have wonderful conversations with me about their lives, their trials, what they've overcome, and the ways that they've used all that they've learned to inspire others in their new life purpose. So I'd like you to welcome today Nina Acosta. She's a transformational life coach and energy healer who guides female entrepreneurs back to their authentic self to step into their power and create a life they truly desire. Her methodology combines psychology, science, and the woo-woo, and her deepest desire is to guide others to rediscover their most authentic self. And it's funny, lately I've been stumbling on words on my intros, and I think that's the universe telling me, stop doing it for them, let them introduce themselves. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Nina. Thank you so much for being here, first of all. We had
Yeah,
such a
thank you for
lovely
having me.
conversation when we first met, and I'll hand it off to you to introduce yourself and maybe tell the audience a little bit of kind of how you got to be a transformational life coach and the things that you've encountered and learned along the way.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that introduction. Basically what I do is I work majority with women, some men, really to find their most authentic self, step into their own power. And we also, when I say the science, psychology, and woo woo, it really is just, the science, right? Because people think the woo woo is like, black magic or something magical that doesn't even like really exist. It's the science behind our thoughts, our emotions, and how they put a frequency out into the world, right? And then we have our energy field. And so I work with people on getting to their root issues and removing those limiting beliefs and mindsets, because a lot of times, if we just work on energy, that's great, right? We're going to always have to go to an energy healer, get that energy, stagnant energy removed. But if we know what the root cause is, the thought and emotion causing that frequency, and remove that, then it can be removed permanently, and to help people move forward, whatever's holding them back in their, in their life. It could be relationships, it could be their career. I mean, it could be their business, it could be, money blocks. So I really just hold a deep space for those people, and to give them, the room to really uncover who they are authentically and to share, because a lot of people are so scared to share, some of the traumas they've been through because of the fear of judgment and shame.
Right. Right. And so is it only entrepreneurs that you work with?
No,
Or
well,
kind of
they're mostly
anybody?
female. I work with really a lot of women, but it's mainly female entrepreneurs. There's some female entrepreneurs that are really wanting to launch their business and they're not sure why they're not moving forward. But there's also women that are female entrepreneurs that realize that that's not for them, right? And so they have that guilt and the shame of letting that go, because somewhere along the line they told themselves that they had to be successful, they
Mhm.
had to do everything on their own. And success is a funny term because it means, different things to different people. So
True.
it's really like finding out, what does success mean to you? What is the life that you want to create? Not what society is telling you to create, or how you perceive society is telling you, you should live your life. Like, what is it that you want to create? What is authentic to you?
And you know what's interesting is I find that so many, maybe it's my own journey that has, brought me into seeing this. Um, but it feels like there are just so many women in that space now who are ready to take that leap to explore what is important for them, what's authentic for them, to step outside what they thought their life was supposed to be, and to
Mhm.
really have the courage to address it and make those changes. Because maybe I wasn't in that space, and it's entirely like likely impossible, but like 10 years ago, I don't even know if I heard half of these conversations at all. It seems like there's a groundswell movement towards really carving and molding your life into what is right for you. And to be able to even do that, you need to know yourself. And most people don't even know themselves. So it's like a multi-layer process before you can even say like, okay, this is right for me. If you're not connected to yourself and you haven't done your inner work and you don't know who you really are, you can't even genuinely create a life that works
Mhm.
for you.
Yeah, and that's really powerful and that's so true, right? Like I know it's men and women. So I think it's from when COVID hit, the great resignation. Everybody's kind of like, what are we doing? Like, what have we been doing our whole lives, right? We've been going to work at jobs that we hate. We're losing our souls. We keep working for people. There's a lot of people that are sitting there and reevaluating their life, right? And you have a lot of people moving, like from the city to the country or from the country to the city. People are moving everywhere because everyone's like, whoa, it's like a wake up call. And you're so right when it says you have to know who you are authentically to create the life you want, because so many of us get caught up in the hustle and bustle. I know I did, and I shared a little bit about my journey with you during our first conversation. It's like I got so caught up in what I don't even know because it wasn't really authentic to me, right? It's like what I thought success was, and a lot of it had to do with material things. And it was like an overachiever. Like I had to prove myself. I went and got my master's, which is good. Those are all things that helped me, in my business. So it wasn't just like I did something for nothing because, I learned a lot of valuable information. I was able to apply it. But, what if I just done this like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and just like really tapped into who I was authentically, but I was too scared. I was too
Right.
scared to make the steps and move forward and uncover who I truly was authentically for the fear of, I think, loss of connection, really, for me.
Mm. Yeah.
And it was just like, oh, well, what will people think about me if I'm an energy healer? What would people think about me if I'm a coach? I have to talk about my feelings all the time. But it's always like, also, that part of me is being vulnerable too, like being seen by people, like we're talking about my feelings and about my journey. Right. And so it's, it was a wild ride. But once I made that shift, and obviously I had a coach and I had help because I was just finally at the point where I had, depression, anxiety, and I was just like, man, no matter what I do, I felt like there was a cycle. It was just cycling back over and over again. The depression, the anxiety, nothing was satisfying me. And it's because I was looking at things externally to satisfy me instead of really getting in tune to who I was and my purpose and what God put me here to do, And it's just like that's where the peace is. And they tell you that, in the Bible and everything like that. I wouldn't, but I don't really like it's just plain and simple. When you get to who you are authentically and how you are created to be, because we all have a different blueprint, right? We're all put on this earth for different things. That's where the peace is. And then once the peace comes and you start trusting the process, and that's, we talked about surrendering.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But once you start trusting the process, it's like you really don't have to worry about anything. And I think that's one of the things about our humanistic journey is we don't really trust the process, or we start trusting the process and they're like, we don't want to let go, right? Like it's just a constant battle. And it's that mindset, it's that conditioning
Yeah.
saying that, you have to, do A, B, and C to get D when it's not necessarily true. There's other ways that you can create once you get in tune with your most authentic self.
That's also there's so much that I want to respond to, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but and it's also powerful because it's so
Yeah.
right. I mean, what you said towards the more in the beginning of what you were saying is about how, we're trying to prove ourselves and we're spending so much time. It's like we're trying to fit into a box of what we think is going to give us this life, but we're not it never works because it's not who we are, and when we talked about in our first conversation, and all the audience knows about, I've spoken before about my own, and if you want to give some examples about yours, it's about, we think this is what we need to do. I was a single mother. I worked full time. I thought it was important to set an example for my children as an independent woman who was running kind of everything she needed to do, participating in the community, volunteering her time, and
Mhm.
doing all of these things that I thought, as you say, what we think success is and what we think defines us. And I hid so many sides of myself because I was afraid of losing those connections, I just put on this image. And it's not to say that I didn't love my job at the time and I did beautiful things, but I know what it was filling for me or fulfilling for me was more of the ego of the like, okay, look at what I can do and look, I can do this and look, I'm managing to do everything that I like I'm think I'm supposed to. And
Right.
it just burns you out, right? It burnt me out completely. And the rebuilding process was I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself
Mhm.
at all. It took me like a year to figure it out because I needed that year to come down from that hectic pace. And and thank you to COVID for that. I'll give COVID
Yeah.
that, but also to just learn to understand who I am and like why do people, where's my worth? Why do my kids love me? Is it because I managed to make their lunches and bring them to their activities? And, you know, or is it just because I'm mummy,
Yeah.
and I love them? So all of those, it's such a multi-layered journey for people to be able to get to. And then, when we talk about trust and surrender, it's also linked to what we think we're supposed to be doing because we think we can control it all, right? And if we
Mhm.
can control it and we make it happen, then that's what we're supposed to do. But to let it just be and just trust and surrender, those words come up all the time because they are the key core words. And to know that it's okay if it doesn't all go exactly the way you think it needs to. Some of the most beautiful outcomes for me have been when I've let go of what I think needs to happen and then something kind of filled its place and I was like, well, that's great. I don't know if that would have happened had I tried to
Mhm.
continue sticking the square peg in the in the round hole,
Yeah.
pushing. So it really takes, but it's like a cumulative learning, right? You
Mhm.
can't learn all of that at once. It really is this very slow process of recognizing cycles and then not wanting to keep repeating the cycles. And so then
Mhm.
starting to explore, okay, well, where is this cycle coming from? And I agree, what you do and what I think a lot of us coaches do is we really try to get to the root cause because you can give someone an antidepressant but you're masking the symptoms.
Mhm.
You're never, the rot is never going to go away until you heal it from the core. So that's the essential work, but it's the hardest work too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing too. It's just like when it's in your conscious mind, that's when you know it's ready to be healed. Right. And people are like, well, I don't know what I have to work on. I was like, well, if you're thinking about it, that's your, ding, 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 it's ready to be addressed. And it is that awareness. And awareness is key, like you can't heal something if you're not aware that you're doing it. And it's just a
Absolutely.
constant journey, it's just like there's like an onion. I think a lot of coaches use that, example, onion, and you're peeling back the layers of things and like, why do I think this way? Or wait a minute, like why did I go get my master's? Like you're thinking like, did I even really need that? But another beautiful thing though, too, is there is no right or wrong path. I think
Mhm.
we tell ourselves that there is a right or wrong path, or, oh my God, I made the wrong decision. And it's just a decision. Right. And that was something for me. It's just like, just make a decision. And if that's not the right decision, then just shift it, like instead of putting so much pressure on myself. I'm like, did anybody die? No, nobody died. So just like shift the decision, instead of being like beating yourself up, like, oh, I made the wrong decision, or, just replaying those situations in your head over and over again. Just make a decision, and just take action. And even when we look back, it's like when we look back on our life, I know I can look back on my life. It's just like, oh, okay, I see why everything happened the way it did. Even though through that time, I was like, because I didn't have the proper tools, to
Yeah.
cope and to like shift things, I'd be like, oh my gosh, my world is falling apart,
Yeah. That's also just from I think how harshly we judge ourselves, right?
Mhm.
We're trying to make ourselves live up to these standards that are impossible. Nobody's perfect. And like you said, we're judging these decisions. Is it the right one? Is it the wrong one? It could be a decision that ends up bringing a complication for you or something difficult to deal with. But okay, we shift, we try to adapt, we compensate, and we learn from it to move forward to a different decision. But we end up getting trapped in this paralysis of
Mhm.
either not being able to make the decision and then harshly judging ourselves between right and wrong when we're doing our best with the tools we have in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That self-judgment, that negative self-talk, it can get you. And a lot of times you don't even know where it's from. Like, like I know through the process, like my own process, and sometimes still when things come up, I'm like, where the hell did that come from? Like who, like who is that? And it's always, yeah, I'm like, what? Where did that come from? And sometimes I have to track it back. But also too, it's like a lot of people are empathic, and because we are all connected, and we are all linked to one supreme consciousness. Like sometimes those thoughts aren't even our thoughts, especially when there are people around us. There's times where I'm like, doesn't even make sense. Like, why am I, saying that to myself, and then
Absolutely.
once I get out of that situation, like, or that environment, it's like I have my own thoughts back. So it's just like really recognizing what are your thoughts. And if they are your thoughts, where are they coming from? And if they're not, just realizing that, because we all think, because we are energetic beings and we pick up on all kinds of frequencies when we're around other people, and we all think sometimes that we integrate those thoughts as ours, and they're not actually ours.
Oh, absolutely. And that also ties into like all of the ways we want to be perceived. So we have
Hmm.
these subconscious shifts of picking up on how they're thinking and how they see it, and then we want to reflect that back to them. And so we compromise our own thoughts, or we shove away our own, um, values, and the word platform isn't the right word. It's coming to my head, but it's anyways, but our own thoughts and our own stance on things, because we want to reflect back to the person who we're with what they want to
Hmm.
see, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that also happens more the less solid and secure we are within ourselves, and the less we know ourselves, the more easy it is to be that way. I know I used to be much more reticent to actually express what I really thought. I have
Hmm.
my one of my best friends for over 20 years, and she's really been able to see this evolution from this quiet girl, and God bless her for always standing by me. um, and I know that I used to hold back a lot of what I thought, whereas in the last few years since my real journey has taken place, and I've come to know myself so well, and really be able to embody it and have the courage to speak my mind. And the more I do, it's been great, because she's like, oh, I love that you now said that, that you had the courage to say that straight to my face. And I was like,
Yeah.
I did, that 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said that to you, you know, and we laugh about it, but it's so, it really, it all comes with that deep knowing of yourself, which really is the key to everything. I feel, everything is so interlinked: surrender, faith, trust, leaping,
Hmm.
knowing, healing. All of that work comes in one beautiful big basket.
It
um,
does.
and it's so life changing.
It is. It really is. And it's so funny because my journey was the opposite of yours. Like, I always spoke up, and then at some point I just stopped, and I think it was because of the reaction I was getting from people, because I've always been very strong willed and I've always had an opinion, and then growing up in the South, it's not always portrayed as what it is, and
Yeah.
so like, I think for me, it's like I stopped, and I just quit speaking up. And then I realized that I was just like, wow, this is where a lot of my negative self talk was, because I wasn't honoring myself, my own feelings, and how I really felt. I was trying to be that person that fit in, right? And I know I'm a very like dynamic woman, you know what I'm saying? So, and I would try to force myself in, like, let me just fit
Yeah.
in, let me just fit in. And it would just completely like, it never happens, right? I can't fit in. I'm just like, well, screw it. I'm not meant to fit in.
And you've got that was your soul speaking out, the courage inside you of saying, like, I can only do this for so long before betraying myself, right? It really comes down to self-betrayal when we withhold who we are. And I mean, there's always a way to say things, right? To have, people actually hear us sometimes.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it doesn't mean we have to mince our message or our meaning
Right.
because of it.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask, like, I'm going to switch up a little bit because I know that
Yeah.
you came out with a multi-author book. It was a multi-author book, correct?
Yeah,
So why
yeah,
don't you tell us and me a little bit, because we didn't even really talk about that last time,
yeah.
about the book and how you came to be a part of it, and what part of your story you shared in it, and how you think it can help your audience and your clients.
Yeah, sure. So it's called Inspire Living. You can purchase it on Amazon, and basically, it is a collaboration of several authors around the world. And so we got number one best-selling international,
Okay.
yeah, spot. So that was pretty cool. But it was really about people telling their story and their journey about taking inspired action and what that kind of looks like. And it looked
Mm,
different for everybody. But it's so funny is because a lot of our stories were very similar about us running from our gifts, not tuning in who we were authentically, doing what we thought society or, our social environments wanted us to do, something that we picked up along the way. And it was just really about my journey and how eventually it all came crashing down. Like my body, started shutting down. I was extremely exhausted, irritable, I had anxiety and I'm depression. I really wanted to run away from my life. And I finally just threw my hands up in the air and I surrendered.
mm,
And I just basically had a thought like, okay, well, I need a retreat. I need to go on a retreat somewhere. And after looking for retreats, and there was one retreat that I went to in Colorado that was going to cost, several $1,000s. And basically, at that time, I didn't have the money, and I was just kind of like, having a conversation. I remember being in the bathtub with some wine, sitting there, just like staring at the wall. And I was just like, man, something has to freaking change. I can't keep living like this because I really wanted to run away from my life. And I was just like thinking about ways. And I shared that with my best friend and she started laughing. I was like, she thinks I'm kidding. Like, I'm not being for real. Like, I really want to run away. And I was just trying in my head, like, what is an appropriate way to run away that nobody would get
mm.
hurt? That's what I
Right.
was like.
What's the socially acceptable way to run
Yeah,
away?
yeah. And then so I came up with so many like ideas, but then I was just finally like, all right, God, universe, if this is what you want to do, you're gonna have to like make it happen because I'm tired of thinking about it. Because I kept thinking about like,
Mm,
okay, how am I gonna get it? A couple grand for the weekend, have flight and everything like that. And so what happens is like a couple days later, they basically called me and waived everything for me. And, I just got on my plane and I got there. And ever since then, it's just been an awesome journey, like there's parts of the healing journey that, it is very emotional and difficult to look at yourself, right?
oh yeah.
Like there's memes out there for that. And they're so funny. But it's been great. It's been great. It's just kinda like ever since then, it's just been good. I had so many shifts. I went to that retreat and it was just almost like a veil was lifted up, and I came back and every time I go back, I come back a different person, and so it's like adjusting to like, oh, okay, this is who I am now. And I just got back recently and I'm like going through that adjustment period because it's like you learn new things and it's on sacred land and so healing. And you have the facilitators, which they're really well known in the healing industry. They facilitate that process much faster too,
Mm,
so it's like hyper speed.
right.
And so yeah, so that's how I got on my journey. It was just eventually just throwing my hands up. Like I knew I needed help. I wanted to run away from my life. I just gave it to God. I gave it to the universe. I said, you make it happen, and it happened. And that's the trust and that's the surrender. Once you put that intention there, and then your angels, your guides, or whatever your belief system is, because those are the laws of the universe, they will support you in that. But it was just kind of like, I'm done. Like, that's how I felt. I was just like, that's it. And that was it.
That's like God's way of giving you the signal of, like, okay, here's the first step. Here, I'm going to show you how this works. I'm going to show
Mhm.
you the returns for your faith, and off you go. And here are the tools. It was like a big gift dropped in your lap to open the
Yeah,
doors for you.
I think it was like, thank freaking God, finally, like because it was like constant battle and constant war with myself. And the funny thing is like people like some old friends of mine are like, what made you get on this journey? Well, I knew I was supposed to be on this journey my
Mm,
entire life, I knew. And it was like when you fight against, it's really fighting against yourself, fighting against God. You know what your purpose is, you know what you should be doing. Even 5 years ago, I should have been doing this, but I was just too scared to do it. Right. And so I was just like, no, I'm not going to do it. And I'm going to do things my way, how I want to do them, because I have to control everything. And, and it didn't work out. Right. Like, so I just couldn't fight anymore. And so here I am.
It's when you can break through those barriers of fear and control, because those are the two main things that shape our lives from the beginning. And those are the two, it's like the ultimate, boss at the end of a video game level. You have to defeat fear to be able to move forward into, this whole other realm of life, because it is the most insidious and horrifically restrictive and paralyzing fear and mindset that I think any of us can have. Because even before anger, fear, where does anger
Mhm.
even come from? Majority of the time, it really comes out of deep-seated fears, right? So,
Mhm.
it's interesting that you said about, I mean, I've had that similar experience of, everything coming crashing down. And I think that's a major element in so many people's stories, is they really get to a point where nothing works for them anymore.
Mhm.
And that's when, fear becomes, it's kind of like I've got nothing left to lose, or I've got no strength left in me, or I'm depressed and I'm exhausted. There's kind of like nothing is worth anything if you can't keep going in direction, that path that you think you have to be on. And then you start to question the value of that path, and then fear becomes less imposing and more easy to battle, because you're kind of at your end of your rope anyways. So
Mhm.
fear, like, acquiescing to fear didn't get you anywhere good, right? It just led you down a path that becomes untenable. And so then that was for me, at least, when I realized that I was not going anywhere good. And it was
Mhm.
all because I was living a fear-based life, that I recognized that as much as I'm still scared, like, I've got to step beyond the fear boundary, because I'm not going to survive continuing on this path.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I don't think there's a way, I think what I'm learning and throughout my journey, there's different levels of that fear,
Mm.
right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
there's different levels of being seen.
Yeah.
And so it was like, especially when I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to contribute to a book, oh, no problem, blah, 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 and it's really easy for me to write and to channel that information and for it to come through. So it wasn't much of a process for me, but I think partially that's because of grad school too, because I had to write so
Mm.
many papers,
Yeah.
but, then when the book came out, it was like,
Mm.
"Woo!" People are gonna read my chapter? What? Like, it's there was another layer of fear that I did not know, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, why do I feel this way?" Like, I felt so tense after the book came out. Most people get excited, but a lot of us, if you experience it too, like, anytime you
Sure.
put yourself out there like that, like, the first time, like, you're just like, "Oh my god, people are gonna read it, like, I'm out there now," like, you
Yeah,
can
it's in
and you have
writing.
all this, like,
It gets.
chatter in your head, you know, and
Yeah.
it's like, I had to, like, deal with that, and, luckily, I have a clan, a group of people, we call ourselves the Authentic Lifers because that's part of the group. And I was just like, called her up. I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me, and I was like, this is what I'm feeling. I need someone to throw it up on a whiteboard for me because I'm trying to figure it out. And she helped me like work through it. And it was another level of being seen, and it just constantly, as you evolve, there's always going to be that other level of being seen, being more vulnerable, putting yourself out there for the world. And so it's like really addressing that mindset, and it's very good that I've had a lot of mentors around me because they said some of that stuff, it's just another level of it. It doesn't really change, it's just, but you're able to shift out of it, quickly.
Yes. Yes, that's what I was gonna say. It's that
Yeah.
you're building, it's so cumulative, right? It's like you said before too, it's that you end up addressing what you're ready for. And sometimes what you're doing brings in new things for you to
Mhm.
deal with. But the trove of like the stash of tools that you have continues to grow. So it doesn't mean that you can always eliminate all of the wounds or triggers or issues that you have. It just means that after a while, they don't necessarily leave you in bed for a week.
Yeah.
It just, it becomes something, your awareness, is much more quick to catch it, of being like, okay, like you
Hmm.
said, like, okay, I'm feeling all of this, so I know I need to work it out because I'm not really clear on where it's coming from. You build the support group around you, because
Hmm.
we all need people to work through things through with. I think like all coaches need coaches, and all people need
Yeah, yeah,
mentors,
absolutely.
and in some form or another, right? Whatever way that resonates. And then that way you work it out and can go, okay, so I understand what this is, and I'm not going to let it stop me. And I might feel still a bit of that, hesitancy or discomfort around it, but I recognize it for what it is, and I can move forward and fully step into it. I experienced that also. I was in two multi-author books at the beginning of the year in January and February, and it was one thing to write it. It was very transformational for me to write my own chapter, because I really
Hmm.
shared like
Hmm.
things that I don't even, didn't publicly talk about in a certain way. And that was one thing, to send off my document to the publisher. Great, it's published. And then, like you said, if they're like, wait a minute, people want to talk to me about it, and I have to now
Yeah.
talk about what I wrote, and people ask me questions, like I had a
Questions. Yeah.
questions about what I wrote, and I was like, I wasn't prepared to actually talk to you about it. It's like I read it
Hmm.
and that's it. I wrote it and that's it. So it was a whole other level of vulnerability, because you can pour yourself onto paper, and then having to be faced with what you've written is another level. But it was also it was very impactful, and it made
Yeah.
me what it forced me to do, and it was a positive thing, was it forced me to step forward and go like, yes, that's right, that is my story, and I'm not going to be abashed or ashamed of it or feel silly about it. I'm going to embrace it, because this is my authentic self, this is who I am, this is what I experienced. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for asking. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you're so right on there. Like, that's afterwards. Like, I didn't even, yeah, after the book came out, that's when I started thinking, oh my God, like, what did I do for a second? And then I was like, no, 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 it's okay, it is fine. But and I think a lot of us experience that too, like especially when you do a project like that, there's so many levels that come up that you don't even know that's there, and it's just like, because you feel like eyes are on you, like
Yeah.
that's how my friend put it. She was like, she wasn't trying to be funny about it. She was trying to comfort me, but she was just like, all these eyes are watching you now, and I was like, ah,
Like, oh my
because
God,
I'm
that's the worst thing
introverted, like, oh, that's not what I want to hear. Thank you.
thanks so much.
This is
Well, but
hilarious.
it ends up being like the healer is made to heal themselves, right? We're the
Mhm.
healers. And through that experience, we've had to pull ourselves through it and, reflect back exactly what we're trying to share and use it to heal ourselves. And that's the
Yeah.
beautiful thing I've found about stepping into this healing world, is it really came out of the growth and the journey that I was on, until I came to a point where I was like, I feel like I've come so far. There's so much that I want to give others to help them along too, right? And
Right.
by doing that, you perpetuate this cycle, because you continue to learn about yourself. You grow, you watch other people grow, you help them grow, you learn more about yourself, and it really just becomes this cumulative bubble, like these Venn diagrams, where everything overlaps, all the circles overlap, and
Yeah.
and it just grows and grows. And it's really, a few years ago I had no concept of it whatsoever, and it's just been so mind-blowing and
It
like soul
is.
lifting. Yeah.
I know. It's just like there's so much to learn, like I am a baby on my journey compared to, my mentors. There's just so much to learn. And then I went to Sedona and I just learned a shit ton more, and I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
like I've been saying chakras wrong, like it's been so like it's so cool though. But you're so right. Like even with my clients, it's the thing is, it's like every time I coach them, it's like I learned something about myself. So it's like both of us are healing at the same time,
Yeah.
and it's not a one-way process. It's like a co-creation with
Yeah.
them. And so it's like I either see something that I've been through or something that I'm working through, but on a different level. And it's like I learn from them just as much as they learn from me. And it's a co-creation, and it's a cool, beautiful thing to see.
It is, and it's really opened my eyes to what life really is, right? Like it's co-creation. We need one another. and we build these energy frequencies. Like I often feel when I walk out of when I'm done with a session with someone, I feel the energy that was channeled between us.
Hmm.
Aside from like the talk is like this level and all the energy is churning under here, and the
Hmm.
talk just facilitates the exchange. But it's beautiful. I've become, speechless sometimes because it's just so overwhelming, and it's a whole other world that I wish. I'm happy to see so many people discovering and at their own pace and embracing, and I'm just so grateful to be a part of it and to get to know people like you who,
Yeah.
this show in itself has been an incredible part of my journey because I'm encountering people who approach it from everybody has their own approach and their own modalities
Hmm.
and their own perspective, but at the same time everybody's heading in the same direction. Like it's like we're all converging on this one road to bring us to source, to bring us to love, to bring us to unity,
Yeah.
in the ways that are authentic and individualistic to
Yeah.
each of themselves.
And that's the beautiful thing, because it's like we're all here, especially the ones on this path, to a level consciousness, right?
Mm.
And it's all the same message. Like if you even really think about it, what everybody is saying, it's all the same message. Even if you go to Tony Robbins or some other big names out there, it's all the foundation of love. It's all the mindset, emotions, the energy, And so, but we all have our own way, and we all put our own twist in saying it,
Right.
And that's the beautiful thing about it, is because it it doesn't matter. There's no competition, That's why it's
Mhm.
so funny, because when people are out there, like people, on Facebook and social media with your coaches,
Mhm.
some people will say people steal other people's stuff. Like, how can you steal anybody's stuff? Because it's coming from the same place. Like it's just our spin on it. There's nothing to steal.
No, there's room for everybody. That's
Yeah,
another beautiful thing that I've
absolutely.
loved is, if anything, it's like the one space I've never felt competition, and
Hmm.
and the more people I get to know, it's just accumulating and adding to this beautiful network and community that's growing, and everybody's like very open and welcoming to each other. There's no
Helpful.
like
Like
there's
it's
no backstabbing, there's no
yeah,
underhandedness, there's just genuine goodwill, there's joy, there's sharing, and there's room for everyone because everyone's different. So what might work for a client who works with me, it might not work for them to work with you, and your client might
right,
not connect with me, and that's
right.
okay because we're both here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's a beautiful thing, but it's cool. It's cool to see that we all have, generally, like you said, we're going down the same path. We all have the same message. It's just, comes out differently.
Yeah, it's the great awakening, that's how I'm really happy to see it that way, as
Hmm.
really a groundswell kind of countering a lot of the fear-based mindsets that's growing in another, it's becoming a little polarized, but I'm happy to see that swell and that growth of love and positive energy and energy work. So, it's nice to connect with you and people like
Yeah,
you in this
you as
field because
well. I love it.
yeah, yeah, it's really beautiful. So, I want to ask you to we're coming kind of to the close to the end of the episode. I had told you a bit last minute, I apologize, but about this book list that I'm creating of all of my Soul Speak guests. So
Mhm.
it's the Soul Speak guest recommendations, and it's growing beautifully. And it's a good list for me because there's books on there that I haven't read myself. So it's fun to see all the books that have inspired incredible coaches and leaders and healers that I'm speaking with. And it's on bookshop.org, which supports independent booksellers in the US. So anytime you order from them, you're supporting an independent bookseller, which I think is great. And so I'd like to ask you to share your recommendations for the audience, and we'll have that list in the show notes with all
Yeah,
the other info.
sure. First, I will do a shameless plug.
Yes,
Inspired
absolutely. Do the
Living,
plug. Do it.
a guide to joy and prosperity, which you can get on Amazon. I believe the hard copy is now available for about, I think, $5. Yeah, but also a book that I read that stood out to me that I keep thinking about, is by Penny Pierce, called The Frequency.
Okay.
So she talks about how energetics and the science about energetics and how it plays into everything and trying to create the life that we desire. But it also
Mhm.
talks about how, your thoughts and your emotions are behind that too. So there's a lot of good science in it. And it's just one of those books that you can listen to or read and you can't put down because you can feel it. Like it's almost like you're feeling her frequency,
Oh
by
yeah.
her words. It's like it gives you the chills. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I just could not put that book down. So that would be the two books that I would recommend.
That sounds awesome. I think I'm gonna look into the frequency for sure. And your book, Inspired Living, also. I love those. I love those multi-author books. I think that it's also a bit of a new phenomenon in the last few years that's really taking off, especially with self-publishing growing and people being able to share their stories beyond the traditional publishing route. And I think it's contributing so much to the healers sharing their own story and working through being able to be seen, and also reaching people who might, who will resonate with, may not resonate with every story in the book, but if there's a few at least that really grab them and really connect for them, then that's incredible. You're kind of increasing the reach by having all
Right.
of those people participate. And I think that today's world is all about communication and sharing, and it has to be in a good way, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think we're all managing um, to manifest it that way, or at least to direct it into that healing space, to just give more
Mm-hmm.
and more resources and more food for audiences to take in and for people to connect to and resonate with. So I really appreciate your recommendations. How
Oh,
do
you're welcome.
you, I want to ask you, so how do you feel that book has necessarily influenced your work with clients, if it has?
Um, the frequency,
Hmm.
I think for me, is more so understanding energetics. I think like that helped me get more clear on how everything works because I think people, like I said, there's so many different variations of science, right? And the power of intention and, your emotions and your thoughts when you set that intention, your vibration is a low or is a high. There's like so many little things that go in there. And so it really like helped me understand that a lot better, like how everything operates. And also for me, it was one of the first books that I read. I was already in the energy healing space, but I still want to learn more, like again, like we have what I learned when I went to Sedona again, like there's so many other people that have been on this journey a lot longer that I'm around,
Right.
but also when I went to Sedona and people that lived outside the US, like bringing, and they know like the authentic stuff,
Right.
like, all the chakras we have in our bodies and all the meridians and everything like that. They know like the true authentic stuff. The people that lived in India and they came to the US and, that I've met. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so
Yeah.
much. But the frequency, basically, it was easily digestible. I don't know. And maybe it's because like her energy, like something about it that I liked, but it was like she broke it down so easily where it was very digestible and you understood like what she was talking about. And then also my training with the mind and the emotions. And I thought I had a concept of how energy worked, and I'm still learning more and more and more and more, about it. And how it's, all tied to God. It's a gift that we have from God and all, works together. But it's just you'll have to get the book. Like I always recommend that book to everybody. Like
I
I'm just
will.
like that frequency, Penny Pierce, like get it.
Send you some royalties. You're sending her so many readers.
Yeah. It's such a good book. It really is.
Are you familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza's work
I
at
haven't
all?
read one of his books. I know who he is, but I haven't
So
picked up his
it
book.
sounds similar. He also takes a scientific approach to energy and matter,
Mhm.
and really breaks down the scientifics of energy and how, study, if I may be wrong in how I want to get this right. So what I remember reading is how he explains that basically there are certain, I think they're smaller than atoms, and I'm not remembering the term, but that only kind of appeared in scientific studies when attention was put on them.
Mhm.
So that was the basis for establishing how, our attention and our energy helps to create the reality, right?
Mhm.
And so based on that, where you put your intentions and where you put your attention, and the energy that you embody while you're doing that is going to create the reality around you. And so
Mhm.
if you he brings it into the body, which is where he talks about how you really have to feel that
Mhm.
you've already got that job, or you've already bought that house, or you've already met that person. You have to generate that energetic feeling within you to be able to really manifest the reality of it. Because if you just sit around and say, well, oh, this is what I want, and oh, this is the house I want, that's not the manifesting. The manifesting is embodying the feeling as though it's already happened, because of the multidimensional planes, where somewhere it has happened and it is
Right.
happening. You have to bring that feeling into your body. And then that is where if you're it's like if your mind and your body feel and know that it is happening, and it's in the reality inside you, it'll generate into the reality outside you. Does that
Yeah, it's that, yeah, 100%. So getting into your heart space, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's why it's basically, figuring yourself out, like self mastery and what's most authentic to you. Because you're not going to have these emotions and those feelings because you can't trick yourself, right? Like, you can't be like, oh, I'm happy. But you can also manifest from a place of like not having those good feelings. I have, I've
Mhm.
manifested things and I wasn't saying it was in my best interest, and I had learned some lessons from it, that you can manifest things without getting into your heart space. But if what we're all looking for is that love, the joy, the peace, the prosperity, the abundance, and that comes with tuning in, you know, to who you're created to be. Yeah. Yeah.
And I know I'm a very physically I know for me, my spirit moves a lot through the body. Things need to be connected for me through my body. And so that concept was a big shift for me, because I know that if my vibration, if I'm in a space for the day where the energy is not there, I don't even try to go think about anything, because I know I'm going to be sending out the wrong vibration around it.
Right.
And better off just work through what I'm feeling and get myself into a better space. And then we can work on the
Yeah.
manifesting and the visualizing, because it's yeah, it just doesn't not going to
Yeah.
be my best interest. And that's why I love, like you said, in the retreat, the people who came from outside the US, who were so well versed in um, maybe varying forms of energy work, which dealt with chakras and bringing things into the body. To me and my perspective, when you really join the mind body, that's where you get the full and complete
Mhm.
energetic resonance. It without one, there isn't the other one doesn't have its full capacity, I think.
Yeah, yeah, no, and that's the beautiful thing about unraveling everything,
Mhm.
because it's almost like, "Oh, wait a minute. You mean I only use like 4% of my brain, or I'm only like there's all this information out there and I'm only taking in like 2%?" Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
It's like opens this whole new like world.
yeah.
And it's so funny because the more you get into it, the more you realize there's big names, people
Mhm.
that play with, that do know energetics. They know how everything operates.
Oh,
And it's just
absolutely.
like, oh, okay. But like if you're not into this world like I wasn't, you think, at one point in time, I knew like in my heart and my soul, this was the route. I knew there was something to it, but I didn't know like all, the ins and outs that I'm learning now. Like I'm like, how did I do that?
How do you
Like
access it? Yeah, exactly. How do we get there? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, and I would create things, and I was just like, how did that happen? And I did it through prayer, and
Prayer is very powerful.
yeah, it's
People
the same thing. You're setting the intention, you're connecting to source, you're connecting to God, you're having those emotions, and that's how you create.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's funny that prayer came up for me in a thread, in a conversation with someone who I adore, a coach who I think is incredible. And she started talking about it. I was like, it's true. Prayer is it has so much resonance. It's just in how you connect to it. And
Mhm.
for those of us who have issues or negative impressions around institutionalized religion, it'll have a
Right.
negative resonance for them, but it doesn't have to be, because prayer is, like you said, it's just your connection to source, to
Right.
spirit. It's setting your intention, it's sending that vibrational frequency out there. And that's why I believe like places where there have been intensive prayer, or like where there's intensive gatherings and lots of people praying, those are places that like sing in the air, like the air contains that vibrational frequency, and I've experienced it myself. So it's real, and it's
Yeah.
just it's how you connect. And not everybody has to connect through prayer, not everybody's going to connect through
Yeah.
meditation. It's just what works for you and your spirit, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
isn't meant to be
Yeah.
discounted.
Totally. Like I know a lot of people do have a bad connotation about prayer, right? But it's not if you really break down and it's just, I feel like the way see, I'm not one of those. I'm like either or, because my belief system is God, but I totally understand. I've experienced it sometimes myself with people, and church or whatever they say certain things or they have certain judgments, but it's not everybody. But I've also experienced the other side of it. The people that
Yeah.
are very actually authentic Christians and they're really real and loving and they walk in love and faith, and that's everything that we're all teaching. So, it's
Yeah.
just like energy healing and coaching. You get the bad ones, you get the good ones, and it's just what makes the world go around.
That's the human experience, right? Nobody's perfect,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's going to be the spectrum of negative and positive, and you just have to gravitate and find your way towards the positive. I think
Yeah.
that's really beautiful, and I'm so happy we got to touch on that subject.
Me
Actually,
too.
that's a first. So I'm happy because I know that there are people out there in the audience who do resonate with that. So I'm glad to be able to bring it into the whole spirituality and healing world, because I think it has a very valid and legitimate place. So
Mhm.
I really appreciate that. On that
Yeah.
beautiful note, I think we've pretty much, hit
Yeah.
our time, and we're doing it. I could talk to you forever. This is wonderful. And I hope maybe we'll do another episode in a few months or something, and touch
Yeah.
base again. That would be great.
Yeah.
Do you before we sign off, I'm going to ask you one, if you have something to leave the audience with, and also where they can find you, and all of your links will be available in the show notes as well. And the show will be available on Everyday Woman TV, on YouTube, and on podcast platforms. So there'll
Oh,
be lots of
very
places to
cool.
find you.
Yeah, you can find me at www.transcendthelight.com. And if you are someone that wants to take the first step and seeing if coaching is right for you, I am offering a 45-minute free consult just to hop on and see if it's right. Because some people have never tried coaching, right? And some people are ready to make that leap. So, and if I am not the right coach for you, that's okay. I have a network of a lot of coaches. I can pass you along to somebody else. So, just as long as you decide that you want help, you want the help, you want the guides to get you to the next level. And yeah, you can find me www.transcendthelight.com or on Facebook. It's Nina Acosta 111.
Beautiful. Well, those links will all be available in the show notes. And I thank you so much. This has been an incredible conversation. I feel so good. Like I felt the energy through our video call as well. So
Yeah.
I thank you for the time, and I thank you for the conversation and the sharing, and you know, thank you. And have a
Oh,
great
my
day. I
pleasure.
haven't
I
come
love
up with
our
my
conversations.
it's great. I haven't come up with my sign off yet for the show. So it's always just kind of like, have a great day. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it's
And we'll
good.
do this again. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.